Good morning, and welcome to the Mental Breakdown. I'm Dr. Berney Wilkinson.
And I'm Dr. Richard Marshall.
And Richard, we're recording on a different day than usual because I wasn't really available yesterday. You weren't really available yesterday on our normal recording day.
So was it yesterday? Friday, right? Today's Sunday.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true.
You were correct. We weren't available. I wasn't available yesterday. Neither of us was available on Friday.
Right.
Because a little kink in the schedule.
Yeah, that was
Friday morning. Friday
turned into be a really exciting, dynamic day for unexpected reasons.
Master of understatement. Everything turned out as it was supposed to, though.
Right. So
as it usually does. That's talk for another day. But things turning out the way they're supposed to.
That's right.
Bad things usually pass.
Right.
And you have to have faith that they're going to pass eventually.
Yeah.
But that's a talk for another day. Today is
Sunday, October 2nd. And just to let you guys know, on October 2nd, 70, how many years ago, there's this guy who wanted to learn more about baseball. And so he's retiring today. He was a baseball commentator. I can't remember his name. You were talking about it the other day.
Vin Scully. Voice of the Dodgers.
I thought it was going to be Scully, but I didn't.
Vin Scully.
Because I was thinking X-Files.
No. The different Scully.
Scully.
No, Vin Scully he's 89, I think, and he's been the voice for 60-some years or something.
89.
And he was interviewed the other night. He sounds wonderful. You know, there's no weakness in his voice. He's still very strong. It's funny to hear an 89-year-old say, "I got to spend some time with my family." And time is measured in small amounts. But he said that on October the 2nd, and I can't remember the year, he walked by. He was, I think, 9 years old. Yes, he was 9 years old. On October the 2nd, he walked by Dodger. Wherever the Dodgers played in Brooklyn, and he looked through the fence, and he said, and he was watching the baseball game. He said, "Boy, I would love to be involved in baseball when I'm big, when I'm an adult." That was October 2nd when he was 9. Today is October 2nd, and he's 89. So 80 years to the day later, he's retiring from baseball after spending his entire life there. So yeah, that's a real mile marker.
How do you remember that specific of a day? Like, I can't remember the day that I decided, the specific date of the day that I decided most things.
But it must have been that important to him.
Yeah.
Like it celebrated like a birthday or an anniversary of some type. But he was discussing that during an interview the other day, and it was really interesting to see a guy like that who spent his entire life, virtually 80 years in baseball.
Wow. And it fits very well with our topic for today.
It does.
Which is visualization. Now, so what we think about with visualization is thinking about or imagining or picturing in your mind's eye a particular thing that you want or that you're striving for, that you are trying to attain.
Right.
And so in his mind's eye, he was involved in some way. He didn't know exactly how it was going to be, but he was going to be involved in some way with baseball. And sure enough, he made that happen.
He did. And for a long time.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Because people in baseball, well, Harry Carey, Chicago Cubs, he was with the Cubs for years and years and years too, so he had that same kind of longevity.
Yeah.
And these guys just become part of the team. I mean, the fans identify as much with the announcers as they do with the players, because the announcers there, the players come and go.
Right.
The announcers there all the time.
Yeah.
But back to visualization, there is this principle in our field that in order to do something, you have to be able to visualize it first.
Right.
If you can't visualize it, you can't do it. The doing starts with visualizing it.
Right.
And that's what we want to talk about today.
Right. And visualization is a little bit more. My voice feels like it sounds funny today because I coached all day yesterday.
It's probably because you were coaching football.
15 and 16-year-old soccer players yesterday.
Right. And you were giving directions from the sidelines?
And they were on a very big pitch. So it was like I really had to
You were straining
project
your voice.
my voice for them to
Right.
hear me. But they did very well. They won.
They
That's
have
great.
to win, otherwise they have to sleep outside.
That's right.
Um,
But yes, so my voice sounds very
so your
funny
voice
today.
a little. No, that's not too bad. That's not
So,
too bad.
but the idea with visualization isn't just the simple act of imagining it. You can think, okay, I'm gonna run a mile, and you can think, oh, I'm gonna run a mile. Okay, I'll just get out and run a mile,
Right.
and that's sort of imagining it, just thinking about it. But what visualization does is it sort of goes a little bit, or sometimes a lot beyond that,
Right.
and makes you really, or really requires you to think about it almost moment by moment.
And that, I think, is the important message this morning, is that we're not just... Visualization is not as simple as just picturing it happen.
Right.
Okay? Because typically what you're going to do is you're going to picture it happening rapidly.
Right.
Okay. And we want to caution, and I think that's the right word, we want to caution against visualizing something too rapidly.
Right.
If you're going to visualize doing something, you have to visualize it at the same pace
Right.
that you would do it.
Exactly.
Okay. We'll get into that. In a
So we're
little
going to
more
get
detail.
into that. But so visualization is a neurocognitive process
It is.
by which you're really thinking about or imagining yourself actually performing the task that it is you're contemplating. So if it's running a mile, you're thinking about it step by step, literal step by step,
Right.
from the beginning to the end of the mile. If it's asking for a promotion at work, it's going through the process. I'm going to say this, and this is how I'm going to say it, and you have to have that specificity involved in it, because that is what is going to make give you the confidence and give you the rehearsal and practice that you need to actually make it happen the way that you want it to happen.
Right. I was talking to a physician a couple of years ago. We were talking about their boards. They have to pass the board. After you finish your degree, that's one requirement, but then you have to pass the boards is the other requirement. And she said during medical school, they had practice tests. They repeatedly, over and over and over again, did these practice tests.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the real situation.
Right.
They didn't take a practice test online and then a real test with paper and pencil.
Right.
They did it in the room where they were going to take their boards, and they did it at the same rate as their boards. So they practiced it using the same time. If you watch tennis, even professional tennis players, they'll hit an errant. They'll make a mistake. They'll hit a ball out of bounds, and you can see them. Their head will drop, and they'll replay that movement to get back to where it should have been.
Right.
This is what I should have done, and you can see them kind of practice that stroke again. They're not only doing it in their hand; they're doing it in their head.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And golf is the same way.
Right.
I think I remember the golf thing you were talking about now.
Yeah. And it's hard to it's hard to imagine or to really consider it in the way that it really happens in the real world.
Right.
Because we think, well, that would take so much time. A tennis match can last hours. A round of golf can last
Right.
hours. A soccer match lasts 90 minutes. And so you think, wow, you really need to visualize it for that long. Yes, if you're
That's
going
right.
to maximize the benefit of visualization, you do have to do it in that moment by moment
That's
mentality.
right. Because mentally you're going to be tempted to do it on high speed.
Right.
But you're not actually doing it on high speed. So if your brain is doing it at high speed, when you get out on the court or on the pitch or on the field, your body's going to do it in high speed.
Right.
That's your brain is going to tell you to do it that fast.
Right. And you simply can't.
Right.
You simply can't, and that's when you make unforced errors
Because you don't have the
Okay.
time to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So there's lots of ways in which we use visualization. We've mentioned multiple sports references, and we'll talk about that again in just a moment. But we use it in positive psychology. We've talked about positive psychology before, but that positivity, that thinking and making your story positive, making it good, making it happy, those are all of that starts with visualization, thinking about
Right.
being happy. We have the holidays coming up, for example,
Right.
and many of us are going to be in situations where we're going to be with family members and in situations that are stress inducing. And so visualization is a great technique to use in preparation for that. Thinking about, okay, I'm going to walk into the house. This person, because they're always sitting in that chair,
Right.
this person's going to be sitting there. They're probably going to make this kind of comment, and I'm going to respond this way. And
Right.
then, you walk through it because most of these things you've done repeatedly, so you know pretty much what to expect. And so you prepare yourself by walking through the process, and you can find ways to adjust it and to shift
That's
it
right.
into a more positive direction.
Because your first visualization is going to be what's happened in the past.
Right.
I mean, where people have been sitting and who's been in the kitchen and who's been watching the football games. That's what you're going to run through, that what you've seen in the past. But you can change that. You can alter that story
Right.
by your own visualizations.
Well, and what's really important about that, because you may be thinking, well, but that happened in the past. It doesn't necessarily going to happen again. But it's exactly that stuff that happened in the past that's giving you anxiety and stress, stressful thoughts about this coming opportunity or this coming situation. It's those past experiences that are making you anxious about future experiences. So preparing for it and thinking about, okay, this is how I'm going to respond. This is what I did last time. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. And shifting it from your own, with the things that you can control, that's going to be what visualization brings to the table.
That's right. Getting a child out of bed every morning.
Right.
There's this difficulty of getting a child up and out and get ready for school. What you visualize is what typically happens.
Which is what gets you frustrated so quickly.
That's right. Then your stress elevates. But if you can visualize something different, I mean, the goal then is to, okay, if this is distasteful or stress-inducing, then what you know about the situation is stress-inducing, then visualize something different.
Right.
Okay. And that will begin to happen as well. If you can visualize something different, you can do something different.
Right.
So visualize what you want to happen and then pursue that rather than what has been happening.
Right. So a couple of other ways in which we use visualization therapeutically is to deal with anticipatory anxiety for some of the same reasons, and also for managing conflicts. If you are going to be interacting with someone and you know that it's likely to be adversarial or confrontational, using visualization ahead of time is going to allow you to better respond to those situations, so that it doesn't necessarily lead to conflict and confrontation and problems like that. You're able to, again, better manage your reactions so that it goes better.
But you have to do it in real time.
Right.
You can't, let's take a confrontation with a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Can we, we can talk about
Yeah.
that. Your teenager breaks a rule or violates one of your agreements, such as violated curfew, came in an hour late or 2 hours late, or you suspect that he or she has been drinking, or there's something that has happened. She violated curfew, and now you have to have a meeting. You have to have you have to discuss this. You have to process this, and so the first thing you have to decide is what kind of a discussion is this going to be. Mm-hmm. You're already angry that she broke the rule.
Right.
Okay, but if you go into the discussion thinking that you're really going to show her who's boss, and you start visualizing this confrontation, that's probably what's going to happen.
Right.
Even though you don't intend it, that's what you're thinking.
Right.
Okay. So that's the first thing, is how do you want to be during this discussion? Second thing is, most of us, and I know I've been guilty of this for years, you go and say, okay, I want to cover these 3 points and that should be fine.
Yeah.
Can't do it that way.
Can't do it that way.
You have to visualize each part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make 3 points, you have to go through each part very slowly as it's going to occur when you're actually talking to your daughter.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I think about with this that we use regularly is when we do workshops and presentations, we use things like PowerPoint and Keynote and all of that. Those programs have a setting where you can go through the slides and it times you. Mm-hmm. So you know how long you're spending on each on each slide as you're practicing, so that you can, so if your workshop or whatever has to last for 50 minutes, you can time yourself and you can know, okay, I either got to pick it up here so when you're practicing through that, you can see the timer. And we have to do the same thing when we're doing visualization. We have to sort of have that mental timer going and think that, okay, there's no way that my conversation with my boss about a raise is going to last 45 seconds.
Right.
There's no way that it's going to be that fast. Well, hopefully there's no way it's going to be that fast. So you got to go through the process in your mind and work through, if he responds this way, then I'm going to respond that way. And you got to work through it that way.
Yeah, we used to practice these things.
Right.
We tell people to, practice the speech with somebody else. If you're going in to ask for a raise, if you're going in to ask for a promotion, ask for a day off, rehearse it first, figure out how long it's going to take, and do it. We say practice and practice and practice, so that when you're in the situation, you're able to accomplish what you set out.
Absolutely. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about what's actually happening when we visualize, because I think that a lot of people see visualization as this hippie, new agey type of thing, and it really isn't. I mean, there's a very strong neurobiological underpinning to visualization. What we know from research is that when you visualize, and again, visualizing it as vividly as possible and in as much real time as possible, your brain, lights up on neuroimaging in exactly the same way as it would if you were actually doing it.
That's right. That was the golf thing that we were talking about, because there was a man who actually thought through these things, and it works either way, that you can either practice your golf swing physically, or you can picture it. You can visually picture the swing, and the same brain structures are utilized.
Right.
Okay. Are the same brain regions will fire.
Right.
Whether you do it mentally or if you do it physically.
Right.
And we just learned that a few years ago.
Right. I'm going to give you a quick example that I've seen for myself. So I can, because I coach soccer and we talk about soccer a lot, I can visually represent in my mind's eye an appropriate kick. How you kick the ball if you're going to shoot and you want to hit a particular target or something. I can imagine that in my head. But if I go in to hit the ball and I start overthinking, I start getting it into my head, okay, I got to really make sure that I hit it just the right way. I go up to hit it and I mess up, I miss. Right. But if I allow my body to do what my body knows to do, because I've gone through it over and over and over again in visualization and in my mind, and the ball's there and I just walk up and I strike it and I hit it, I'll hit the target. And my son and I used to joke about that all the time, because whether we're throwing the football or something and you're 30 yards away and you turn around, you throw the football and you throw it into the basketball hoop.
Right.
And he said, well, how did you do it? When you are visualizing it and you allow your body to do what your body does, then it happens. You know, and you do it, and you strike the ball the right way, or you throw the ball the right way. When we allow our present mentality to interfere,
that's right.
That's when we start to have problems.
That's right, because the brain has two memory systems. They're two distinct, separate systems. One for motor functions and one for cognitive. So you have a thinking brain and you have a moving brain.
Right.
And those are two separate systems. You can have one and not the other. And so, because there are people who are physically paralyzed.
Right.
No problem with Stephen Hawking.
Right.
Who can't move physically but does quite well mentally.
Right.
Okay? What happens is you train your body, you train your motor system, you train your movement system to do what, and you do it over and over and over and over again. But then you get into a match and you start to think about it. Now your thinking brain is starting to interfere with your moving brain.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what we have to be careful of. At other times the moving brain interferes with the thinking brain.
Exactly. And so if we're going in for an interview, we want to take benefit of the other brain. We want to take benefit of the cognitive brain, the thinking brain. Hopefully, if you're going in for a job interview, there's not a lot of physical stuff. You're not going to have to arm wrestle anybody or anything. So hopefully, you're just able to go in and you're able to use your cognitive skills that you're rehearsing and that you're going through with visualization, and use that in those situations.
That's right. And you're not thinking about, I think I'd really like to be swimming right now or
Right.
golfing, because then
Right.
your movement brain starts to interfere with your thinking brain.
Right.
And there's an interesting thing about children with ADHD. We learned within the last year that, we used to say, well, children with ADHD have to settle down, so they have to move. They have to move so that they can work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because we have a little more confusion with ADHD, and we've learned that kids with ADHD have to move in order to work.
Right.
So it's just the opposite with kids with ADHD.
Right. I remember back when I was working at one of the universities, I did an evaluation of a graduate student, and graduate studies is pretty rigorous. There's a lot of work and a lot of studying, and I remember she came in and she needed an ADHD evaluation, and so you're thinking, she's in graduate school, can ADHD really be a problem? And her technique for studying was that she would take her books to the gym with her, and she would run on the treadmill with her book propped open, and while she's running in the gym, she could read and she could concentrate and focus, and it's pretty remarkable because she had to have that.
She had to move.
Distraction, right?
And there are some brain chemicals that are released,
right,
which during movement that could enhance thinking.
Absolutely. Okay. So we do have these two distinct pieces, and sometimes you have to occupy one so that you can actually utilize the other. But when it comes to visualization, you really want to work to focus on the one that you have to use. That's right. At the time.
And people will say, well, I've tried that and it doesn't work. Generally speaking, when people say I've tried it and it doesn't work, it means that they've visualized too quickly.
Right.
Okay. And that's a mistake we all make, is we don't have time to go through a 90-minute game. So we say, well, I can do that in about 10 or 12 seconds. The game doesn't occur in 10 or 12 seconds.
Right.
And so you have to do it. You have to use the same amount of time to visualize that you do when you do it.
Right. So if taking my example is, if you only think about the moment that your foot touches the ball, what part of your foot needs to hit the ball when you're kicking it, well, that part's great. But the approach to the ball, where do you set your plant foot, is critical.
It's necessary but not sufficient.
Right.
So the kicking is not.
Right. So you have to start with, how far away from the ball am I going to? Where's the ball sitting? Is the ball sitting in a divot, or is the ball sitting up on the top of the grass? Where are you going to put your plant foot? How many steps are you going to take? So you have to go through all that. When you're thinking about asking your boss for a raise, you need to start from your desk. Okay, so I'm going to get up from my desk and I'm going to walk through and I'm going to scan the environment, see what's going on.
That's right.
If this is happening or that's happening, I'm going to go back to my office and wait until later. If I get to his office and there's somebody else in there talking to him, I'm going to go back to my office and wait until later. So you need to walk through. And what this real-time visualization does is it does two things. One, it goes through the mental memory and motor memory, so that you know what you're doing piece by piece by piece. But two, it allows you the time that you need to think of complications and alternatives and what else would happen, and be prepared for that.
Yeah, because you can't anticipate the possible obstacles unless you've walked through it a piece at a time.
Right.
If you speed through it, you're going to overlook potential obstacles, potential challenges.
Right. So again, let's use the example of asking your boss for a raise. If you only think about, okay, I'm going to and do it, even if you do it beautifully, and you say, okay, I'm going to get up out of my desk and I'm going to walk through my door and I'm going to walk down the hallway. I'm going to walk in and say, hello, Dr. Marshall. I would like to talk to you about a raise today.
Right.
And you go through it and you just think about really the most ideal way that it could happen. That's great if it happens that way. Right. But what happens if you get up from your desk, you walk out your door, you go down the hallway, and as soon as you walk into his office, you hear him slam the phone down, and he sits back and he says, "Ah!"
Right.
That changes everything.
Right. And you have to be ready for that.
And you have to be prepared for that.
Right. You have to visualize those other possibilities and what you will do, so that you're not caught off guard.
Exactly.
Okay. So you have to visualize the possibilities of other things that might happen.
Right. And so taking visualization, again, in that moment by moment way, allows you the opportunity to look at some of those variabilities and factors that could come in and really affect what you're trying to accomplish.
And I liked that Lou Holtz story. Lou Holtz was a coach at Notre Dame and South Carolina.
Yeah.
He was a college football coach. Now he's a commentator.
Yeah.
And a very good college football coach. But he used to do something like that.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to find where I read this because I read it somewhere and I can't find it. But I held on to it because it's a fantastic story. What I read that he would do is, in college football, most games are on Saturday. So on Friday night, he would get his entire team together, and they would sit in a conference room or a big room so that all the players could be in there, and the lights would be dim, and he would sit there, and they would go through the game, moment by moment, play by play. Okay, so here's the kickoff. The kickoff team is going out. And he would walk them through the entire game.
Right.
And so it's not there's no wonder that he was, he did very well with Notre Dame and South Carolina. He did very well with his teams because you have to put some of the credit on some of these psychological components that he added to his coaching.
The coach of the Chicago Bulls, when they were winning their championships, I've forgotten his name now, but he would do the same thing. He would do all this vision, imagery, visualization. And Michael Jordan was on the team at that point, and he would do the same thing. They've talked about that frequently.
Michael Jordan is well known for talking about the importance of visualization.
And when they, you often hear the phrase "in the zone." Michael Jordan is one of those athletes who will get in the zone. And in being in the zone is when you're when you're able to reach a point where you have only your motor skills.
Right.
You have no interference.
That's right.
You have no interference from the crowd. You have no interference from your thinking. You just are able to totally let your muscles, your muscle memory, and your movement memory take over. And he would do it. Michael Jordan had the ability to do that. Many players don't. And we hear frequently, you can't let the opposition get into your head. Because then you start thinking about how angry you are. There go your motor skills again.
Exactly. And there was a book that came out with some hype and some controversy, I think, many years ago, called The Secret. Do you remember The Secret?
Right.
And it talked about the law of attraction. And no, it wasn't about relationships, but it was about thinking about what you want and how when you can visualize it, you can make it happen.
Yeah, what do you want? I mean, everybody wants everything.
Right.
But you're not going to get everything. So what do you want, and how do you make that happen?
Right. And one of the speakers, I've read the book, but I saw there was a video, a documentary type video associated with it. One of the people who spoke on it, he talked about, sort of visualizing what he wanted to do, what he was hoping to accomplish, and that he had this image of a house that he wanted. And I guess at some point he had found a picture of sort of the house that he wanted, and he had it tacked up on his corkboard, and it was there for a long time, years and years. But he would look at it every once in a while and think about it. And then he and his wife were going to buy a new house, and they were closing on it, and as he's packing everything up, that picture of the house had sort of gotten behind some other papers, and as he's taking things down, and it was the house.
That was the house.
And he had not put it together, but it was the house. But it was sort of in his subconscious. It was in his head that that's what he was going to do. Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup, right? He talked about writing himself a check.
Right.
Writing himself a check for, I think it was $100,000 or something like that. And he had it in his wallet. And he hoped that at some point he would be able to cash that check with the money that he made from the Chicken Soup books. And of course he did very quickly. Yeah. But it's that kind of visualization where you can do it physically like that, like they had a picture, or he actually had the check, or you can do that cognitively, mentally, and do it the same way, and it all comes out with the same effect as it relates to what's happening in your mind.
Right.
So using visualization is it's just such a valuable tool, a critical tool.
It is a powerful tool if you use it correctly.
Right.
And as we said at the beginning, the mistake most people make is they rush through the visualization, and then that interferes when you're actually trying to perform the task.
Right. I know I use it a lot when we do a lot of forensic work here in our office. I use it a lot when I'm going to court.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, okay, what are they going to ask me? How am I going to respond? Even to the point where I'm thinking, okay, what techniques am I going to use to keep myself
Right.
calm? I have a tendency, as you could probably tell, to talk fast sometimes. And so when I'm testifying, I have to make sure that I slow my rate of speech so that I articulate things. And one of the things I have to really make sure that I do, for example, is I have to make sure, more so when I'm testifying than most other times, is that I ask people to clarify their questions before I continue, because you certainly don't want to start answering a question when you think they're talking about one thing, but they're really talking about something else. So, those are things that I go through in my mind, and I hear myself saying it, so that when I'm in that situation, I will say it. I know what it sounds like when I say that. So
the visualization is one of the cardinal principles of sports psychology.
Yes, absolutely.
And because you want to perform at peak capacity.
Right.
So visualization has become an essential part of sports psychology. Well, isn't it just as important to talk to your children, to have relationships with a significant other, to deal with little confrontations that occur in your life? They're just as important.
Right.
So learn how to use visualization, learn how to use it well, learn how to use it properly. You'll find it to be a valuable addition to your life skills.
Yeah. And it does, we will, of course, be very honest in saying that it feels awkward at first.
Yeah, it does.
It feels strange because you're thinking, I'm just sitting here thinking about it.
Right.
Let's just hurry up because I want to go get something to eat.
Right. I have other things to do.
Right. There's stuff going on. But take the time, whether it's before you're going, when you're laying down, getting ready to go to bed, whether it's, when you're riding even when you're riding in the car, you can just sort of be going through it in your mind. But take that time to really think about it, because it's so valuable.
And one final thing that I found useful, I find it difficult just to sit around and think about this stuff.
Right.
I found that I was able to visualize better when I was running. So you
absolutely.
may find that you have to do like a repetitive exercise, like walking or running.
Something
or
you don't
swimming.
really have to think about.
That's right. Some automatic act, and that will allow you. That will give you the time, because if you're walking, there you can't be doing a lot of other things if you're walking or running or swimming. But it's a repetitive act that you do automatically, and it'll clear your head so that you can very slowly run, visualize whatever you want to in real time.
Right.
And I found that I did my best visualization when I was running.
Yeah. And if you are the type of person that don't mind the quiet and the still, a dimly lit room, quiet, dimly lit room is a perfect ideal place for that.
Yeah, and so I guess the first step is slow down. Second step is find out what situation you need to be in to maximize visualization.
Yeah.
Some people need quiet and dark, and other people need active and movement. Figure out what you need so that you can visualize as well as possible.
Yeah, and what you'll find very quickly that it'll become a natural, normal part of your life, because it's effective everywhere.
It's like any other skill.
Yeah.
You have to practice it.
So, all right.
Okay.
So
that was good.
That's visualization.
Right.
Get the brain going. Let your brain practice what you're wanting it to do in those situations.
Let your brain do what it does well.
Yeah.
It's good at these sorts of things, so let it do that.
All right. So that's it for today then.
Okay.
I hope you guys have a great week. We will be back next week for the Mental Breakdown podcast. And we encourage you to write to us or ask us any questions that you might have, and we will be happy to cover those topics.
Right.
Like we said on the morning show on Friday, we are looking forward to getting into more brain-based, detailed, real. Hopefully, we're going to break this stuff down, and we're really going to hopefully help it become more digestible for everyone out there. So
use your brain wisely.
Yes. So, all right.
Okay.
Well, until next week, I'm Dr. Berney.
I'm Dr. Richard.
Have a great one. Stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.